is the song in a lot of ways. You know, it's not just like the accompaniment for the music. No, that is the song, you know. If you don't play that hook, that melodic line, if it doesn't have, you know, these certain elements to it, it's just like,
I was able to learn finale. So now most praise chart songs, we can change the key instantaneously and just pump it out. Of course, people are sight reading if we're throwing them on the day of rehearsal, but that's always the driver, is whoever is leading the song, and they determine that they don't, Alyssa or David don't want to lead, they want someone else to lead. That can change the key. And like James said, it's in the past, I never said a word. Like, they're picking keys, I'm like, oh, because it puts us in C sharp or B or G flat. And, you know, for me, it's not a huge deal, but for a lot of people, it's kind of, you know, it's not, you're not setting people up for success, like you said, you know, and it's going to sound wonky because people are going to miss notes. But now we do, every now and then they will make a big interval jump and question me, like, what does that do to you guys? Or if we have, some weeks we have a flute or a violin or two, and like, well, they're concert, you know, so it's not, but alto sax is E flat, we have a bari sax every now and then, they really take the hit. And then you're right, it does. Now, a couple of us take professional lessons, so we spend a lot of time in those keys, because you have to, like, you're expected to know all these scales and do all these intervals and chords. And so, yeah, G flat, C sharp, it's just another key. But a person that's new into the ministry or just getting back into it, that's like a horror movie. You know, going to see a horror movie, they're just going to be, everything's frightful. But that's the sacrifice we make, I think, to set the vocals up for success, which is the main thing. And that's how we work. We work from that. And if we can compromise, we do, but a lot of times we can't. So I'll spend a lot of time modifying the parts, just making them more playable. So at least if we have a bad key, the parts are still good, but just back them off a little bit is one solution. And now with finale, I can do it fairly efficiently, but not like, you know, as you know, not every church has those resources. So you kind of get stuck handing somebody something that not going to be a lot of fun, probably won't be that supportive in worship, and won't be successful. And, you know, so sometimes you do have to make that choice. And I don't get a lot of say in it. Every now and then, I've one or two occasions I can think of, I said, no, that's going to be a train wreck. We have a lot of stuff in this song. It's going to be, you know what, it's a great song. Let's not train wreck the song. So can somebody else sing or lead, you know? And that's, yeah, we'll get someone else to. So it is a good way to go about it.
Yeah. And it's interesting that I feel like my brain has even expanded in terms of, like, I knew that things affect things. And I like, as a piano player, there's a certain, you know, if I do it in the original key, I'm like, oh, this fits your fingers so well. I didn't even think about that. Like, you know, or there was a day not that long ago where everything wasn't in G capoed on one of the first four frets, you know, like there was other keys. And, you know, if you were doing that open E chord back from the 90s, you know, what are you going to do? Like capo it? Like, what? It's impossible. Like the sound is gone.
Yeah.
You know, you have to force yourself into the recorded key, because that was just the arrangement. And I think this is an interesting part. In modern music, the arrangement is the song in a lot of ways. You know, it's not just like the accompaniment for the music. No, that is the song, you know. If you don't play that hook, that melodic line, if it doesn't have, you know, these certain elements to it, it's just like, oh yeah. I mean, and now I say that, and I know that there's, I don't know, 60% of churches out there don't don't play with the musicality
Mhm.
where you could even recognize a song anyway. So it's not that black and white. And that was, I don't know if that was too harsh of a of a statement or not, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I was just listening to a recording yesterday, and I was like, they started playing the intro, and I was like, I think that's that song, "Great Are You, Lord." Right, it's your breath in my lungs.
Mhm.
And I was like, I think that's that song where they started playing the intro, and it was, and they started singing it, and it was like almost halftime. Like
Mm.
it was just, I was like, oh wow, I had no idea it was going to be that unrecognizable as a song.
Mhm.
Anyway, but that's just that's happening everywhere. You know, not not in our churches, of course, but anyway.
Yeah, we've been accused of. I mean, we do new music every other week. I mean, just we do a lot of new music, so we don't. There's a lot of songs that we haven't done for a long time that might the lead pastor might request or something that might come up,
Uh-huh.
and there were a lot of songs that were popular or meaningful for we might do a song 2 weeks in a row, maybe 3 weeks out of 2 months. See, our congregation hears the song 3 or 4 times, but there were a couple occasions we had a song scheduled to like every other week, and we were like, because somebody, the lead pastor, like I said, requested it. We were like, well, I forget which. It wasn't Oceans. It was another epic older song like that. We did it in reggae, so let's just change the groove.
Yeah.
And we, as a joke, ever heard? It actually sounded really, really cool, and we did it. Um, when I go into that, I'll have to look at what that was. It was actually an amazing thing, and a
Okay.
lot of people like commented, "Oh, that was it was amazing." How because it was different, how more engaging it was.
Mm.
And other people didn't even know we did it.
Yeah.
No, was it different? So, you know, it. But a lot of times, if something gets stale, it's people. They're just not laying into it. They're not um, just. I want to say going for it. What's the term? Like the last couple of weeks, everybody has been just putting everything out, musically speaking, and not holding back. And that
Yeah.
translates to energy
Yeah.
and the song, becomes more alive, like you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe we can shift to the other part of the conversation, the congregational piece of that. I mean, there's a lot of validity, I think, to the different things that we talked about, with the way it changes the feel of something, the way it changes the actual um, fingerings, expression, the playability of songs for the instrumentalists. Um, but for the congregation, do you think it's true that the whole conversation about congregational keys um, is well intentioned, but completely misses the real culprit of why people won't sing if it's not in a congregational key, whatever that is? I mean, do you feel like it doesn't really have anything to do with the song and the key? It's more of a I wasn't led, I don't know the song, and I'm not that developed as a worshiper.
Mm-hmm.
Because won't people find a way? Like, you know how you are. You go to a conference. Like, if you're a worshiper, you go to a conference, you don't know a song, you figure out a way to meander your way into it. You'll learn it. It's too high, you'll sing it. You'll sing it a harmony. You'll figure something out, but you'll make it work. And maybe I'm very much projecting my own brain onto things. But even as I'm thinking about this, it feels almost like the idea of congregational keys might be giving a an anti-itch cream to a sunburn victim. Like, that's a nice fix, but that was, you're not fixing the problem. That's not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about it.
I think it's both and. I think both and. It's all in situation. The thought that I've just keep rolling through my head is you can't abandon the congregation. That's kind of my first thing, and this goes just I think it goes way beyond key. It gets to this point of and it's not always the case. I don't think you're projecting because I feel those same things too. But it's a reflection of how we are, what the title is, worship leader. How are we leading the people into this? So have we done the proper thing of you can get into the big context of what do we believe about God? What do we believe about all of this that we're doing? So it's that big picture stuff, the big macro stuff, but then the micro stuff is, have we done the right stuff in, hey, this is the thought behind this song. This is the meaning behind this song. This is how the melody of the song goes. So it's not only the meaning of the song and the actual melody of the song, and it's yes and it's all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when we had these conversations, it's like everything I heard, I'm like, yep, that's true. That's part of the puzzle. That's a part of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Yep. It unfortunately you're like, what key's the best key? It's such a loaded question, but it's good to think about all this stuff. And the great thing is, Darren, I don't know what your congregation looks like, but I've got a general feel, but mine's small town Ohio, where, maybe they have the country music station on in the back of the pickup truck when they're driving around. And music is not like their life like it is ours. And so what's the best way we can make it? So I don't know. That didn't really answer the question, but that's all the thoughts I have on that.
No, that's good. I mean, it makes me think about hymns, the old songs from the church, and how you do, if you do those in the original keys, they're so high sometimes, and if you have, part singers and you're singing the bass, like they're so low. And do we live in the world that the hymns were written in, in the church? No. I mean, there was different training in singing. There was much more congregational, at least in certain circles, in certain eras, there was more training in congregational singing, to learn the parts and to be kind of discipled and trained in that. But if you do a lot of hymns, like, are you changing those keys too? I mean, if you, and they're written for parts and for ranges, right? Like the bass range can't sing the soprano line very well unless they sing it down the octave, or, and if you change the key too much, then the basses are like, oh, I can't even hit that low note, forget it. So I'm just, it's curious to me to think about, it's not just like the modern music that we're talking about, but the hymns, have a broader range, and I don't know that I've ever heard somebody complain about the key of the hymn that was in its original key.
And like, Christmas songs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true.
Well, I've heard the thought and seen different things about it is, you think about popular musicians in the secular world, like everybody's singing along with Billy Joel when Piano Man comes on. Nobody gives two craps of what key it's in. I don't know what key it's in. I'm singing along. Yeah. And so there's that whole argument too on all the stuff.
You made a good point, Andy, in that we live music. It's our passion, aside from being in ministry. I mean, everyone, our whole department spends a lot of time, going to concerts, just enjoying music, learning about music, perfecting your craft. and you can't project that on the congregation. I have strong feelings about my musical taste, as we all do, and as a ministry, we blend those together fairly successfully. Our church is extremely multi-generational. So, and for that reason, we actually have a separate traditional service with completely different music, completely hymn based from Lifeway Library. Um, Same message, same sermon, different teams. It's a whole separate, it's almost like a separate ministry and a separate church in that sense. And at one point we had tried to, I would say, modernize it, um, not thinking it would grow the service, but just out of the musical necessity to, because the Lifeway hymns, just kind of, they're very choppy and they kind of bump along. And we thought, man, this is to attract more musicians. It's got to be a bit more, not if not fun, just playable.
Musical.
Yeah, so we did. And actually, Alyssa, so Lifeway offers a traditional arrangement and a contemporary arrangement. So we started using the contemporary arrangements, very different piano part. We were using actually horns at the 8 o'clock service. Excuse me. And they were much more playable, sounded nicer. Well, a lot of people in the congregation heard that, recognized that, and no, since some of the team members that were singing, we want the traditional hymns. So that became a point of discussion, and it was decided, yeah, we should honor that. We can't project onto the congregation per se a change. You know, we have the option of going to the contemporary services, which is a major change from that realm. So we went entirely back to the traditional versions, almost strictly piano driven with vocals. Occasionally there's a guy playing electric guitar or maybe an extra acoustic player, but nothing else. And that service, that's its pocket. It has grown. People are, they're worshiping, I think, at a level. I'll walk past in the morning and it's like pretty lively worship. So that, it's interesting how that, maybe that's a discussion in a lot of different churches and ministries. Besides choosing the key, it's, what's the idea of worship? One group has this idea. I mean, obviously that's a huge discussion for another day, but when you said that, yeah, we all drive around in our cars listening to all different kinds of stuff, and then you come into worship, and yeah, it's music, and it's powerful. It's a very powerful language, and it affects a lot of people very emotionally. I mean, there's people, hands up, tears. I mean, it is very powerful. And yet there's things that turn people off. Some people don't like the horns. Some people don't like, we have some phenomenal drummers that, just do some really amazing fills, and some people don't like that. We have an electric player that is a little bluesy in his approach. I think it's amazing. Not that people complain, but you do hear, in discussion, yeah, so-and-so, it's a little too, Joe Bonamassa for me. And so, yeah, but we can't please everybody, nor should we try, I suppose is the, but you're right, the congregation, and I think that's the responsibility of pastoral leadership, caring for the congregation in each ministry and making sure that that's number one, we're caring for the congregation and not our own, yeah, I'd like to, play some, R&B, and get some funky grooves in there, but it's not the right place. So.
Yeah. Well, maybe maybe a place to land has to do with, in terms of keys, can I as the leader actually sing it and sing it well? And then more important than the key that we choose, is does our team own it? And are we able to communicate it? you know, and that has to do with key in terms of, well, it's really difficult to play, or it just doesn't sound good. It's not fun, like you said. Like there's not it doesn't feel like I'm being like, not everybody has that musical thing to them, but those of us that do, and I think the large majority of people either have that as a seed in their hearts, and as far as on our teams, or it's you know, a fully flourished plant. But are we really owning the song? Can we communicate it? Do we, you know, is it music that we love? And that in my head, you know, is going to communicate better and get the end of the day job done. Sorry. Get our jobs done, of creating a space where people can meet with God, you know, providing music and leadership that draws people in and make that connection with the Lord. Like if that's not happening, then none of this matters. And you picked the perfect key for nobody to sing. Well, that didn't work. And I was doing a little reading. I have this old article, like a 10-year-old article from Bob Kauflin. And one of the things that was interesting he said was that you have more of a range of key options in some senses, depending on the feel of the song. Like if it's a slower, quieter song, you can easily get away with it doing it lower, you know, and it doesn't lose the punch as much as the up song that's sung too low, and it's just like, man, that's the flattest crap I've ever heard, you know, like that just sounds terrible. There's no life in that. Whereas if it's a, you know, more mellow song generally, you know, or slower song, there's more space for that. To lower the key if you want to. But I don't know, I mean, is that I don't know if that's helpful, you know, in terms of you know, I let me ask this question. Do you think that worship leaders, I want to ask this. I would know when they can sing the song or not, in the key that it's in, and how can they know that better if they, you know, what are the ways of finding that out, of figuring that out for yourself? And maybe we already covered them, but
I mean, it looks to me like, okay, yeah, because I don't lead by singing. But when I see David and Alyssa try out songs in different keys, I mean, they know right away. You know, it's just pretty obvious.
yeah.
And especially a new song. Well, we do a lot of mashups. So it's kind of like American Pickers, you know, Bundle Mania, Mashup Mania, like they'll mash up 2 tags to one song. I'm like, it's you know, that's when I start pulling my hair out, because I have to transpose everything. But in that, sometimes they'll figure out, oh, that doesn't work. We really want to do this mashup. This really is a powerful mashup, but the key of the tag we just can't. So then we'll go back and try and change maybe the key to the mother song, if you would, and then we start down that road where they're both trying to figure out, sing it. And like James said, you know, finding the high and the big moment in the song, if you can project that energy. But then the issue is, if one of them aren't scheduled to sing it, you have to make a decision. You know, are we going to take that chance with somebody that's not here right now to try it out? And that's happened. We've been at rehearsal, and all of a sudden this key's not working. So then David or Alyssa have to step up and lead it, or whoever, one of the other worship leaders have to. So
Does the person who was singing it also know that it wasn't working? Or sometimes like, hey, give me the keys. You've had one too many.
Yeah. I mean, people get their music 4 weeks in advance. So we're providing the opportunity for you to prepare and discover, hey, this isn't working. And that has happened too. They'll come back to Alyssa and say, I can't sing this in this key. and we can change it. You know, we can make it,
Yeah.
correct it. But I think basically, if the congregation perceives and just intrinsically knows that it's authentic, that we're being authentic, we're not trying to be something we're not,
Mm.
we're not trying to overextend or push something, we're just, like I say, in the pocket, in the groove, being authentic. That always seems to me to translate to tremendous worship energy.
Yeah.
People, it's like they don't even know you're there,
Yeah.
and they're just
Yeah.
fully engaged. And that's, I think, what we try and think about, you know, choosing keys and setting tags up, and, you know, what instrumentation do we have this week, and um, all those factors pour into the end product for sure.
Yeah. You know, something you said made me realize something. You talked about authenticity, you know, and people can pick that up, you know, without having to even knowing what they're picking up. And I think James is more of a performer
Mm-hmm.
than I am. And just in his background. I mean,
Right.
he toured, like that's more in his DNA than it is in mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be much more comfortable and quick and authentic to shift things up, to not push hard in terms of key choices. Now I certainly will have energy, and I'll certainly, you know, have the congregational, that piece and the leadership piece. But in terms of like what I bring to the table, the first thing you notice isn't that, oh wow, he's really got this like pizzazz to him in terms of like a showy performerness. I have a showy because I'm like worshiping, so it's going to be showy, but it's a whole different motivation than I think James just intrinsically brings to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an important thing to know about yourself. You know, not only what can your voice handle, but like how are you wired, and is pushing a key and hitting a certain, you know, range in that gonna feel like, oh, that, you know, that dummy's just showing off, you know, or he's and this, or he or she is trying to be something they're not,
Right.
you know, because that's a quick like, oh, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you stop, don't do that, you know. But I think in the same way that would feel inauthentic, you know, if I would have James sing a song in the key that I want to sing it in, it might feel equally like lackluster, you know, untrue to himself. I don't want to use that, you know, I mean, that's funny lingo, but inauthentic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to know what motivates us, what drives us.
One thing we do, I mean, I'm sure a lot of ministries do the same. One tool in the toolkit that seems to be valuable is texture. So if we do, I mean, obviously the congregation loves upbeat, energetic, big songs, you know, and you've heard us, we pump out a big sound, you know, we got a full team. So I mean, it's going to, if you're not moving somehow, you're thinking about something else, you're somewhere else. And at the same time, you know, you can wear out the congregation and they'll disengage. And so it's always intentionally designed that, you know, whatever set or combination, there'll be a couple of big songs, and then there'll be a full a cappella song, hymn based, or much smaller, just piano and acoustic, or keys and acoustic or something. Everything else backs out. Occasionally the drummer will come out and do a cajon with acoustic, or, you know, and the congregation really seems to embrace that. It's like, oh, you know, they kind of like, yeah, it's not about them, the rock band thing, or the, you know, it is about bringing something to everybody in the room, that everyone's in a different mood, different season of life, you know, that moment, different, the week might have been difficult, easy, they're happy, they're sad, you know. There's always that. So I think the texture thing offers some authenticity as well. It's like, look, you know, it's not a big show. We're just going to pump it all out for 20 minutes. I mean, we have, and there's cases we do, and it's fine, but not every week, not all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me, there's been moments where, I've picked my songs and I sit down with my guitar and start playing through them, singing through them. And I get done, I'm like, I am tired. Like there
Yeah.
was no space to rest. Everything was pushing,
Mm-hmm.
And so, that makes me want to say, okay, oh, wait a minute. Let's take this one song and let's back it down,
Mm-hmm.
even key wise. And from a key perspective, let's make it more mellow. So it's not so driven, and because if my goodness, if I'm tired at the end of 4 songs,
Right.
like my congregation is probably going to tap out at 2.5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I mean, I think one of the last concerts we were at last year, last summer, was Earth, Wind and Fire concert. We were in this, essentially the front row, the second row, and I mean, after 2.5 hours, 3 hours, I was and I embraced every note. I was exhausted. Like I think the next day I felt like I had done a marathon. I was exhausted. Everyone was just like,
yeah,
it is very draining emotionally. I think it's an emotional drain, besides the physical. So
yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll feel. I'm sorry, Andy. Go ahead.
Music is an active thing that we participate in. I had a conversation with my friend the other day, and we were talking about new music, and I was like, I'm just listening to the same 3 records over and over again right now because I don't have, with everything in the world, I don't have the mental capacity, the thinking to find new music because it takes work.
Mm-hmm.
To listen to music, and that's a part of it. So okay, so I know I mentioned this one before, Dave, so I apologize that I'm going to beat the dead horse here, but the expression worship and then music worship, and it's almost like there should be a different word for it, but if we think about music, right, it's just organized sound, but for some reason, just like so many other things in our spiritual lives, it's something that we can't grasp, right? It's something bigger. And I know it's just how my brain is working, but hopefully this is backwards. But
Yeah.
So it's congregation, the singers in the band, and then the song. And our goal is to try and find that little spot in the middle. And sometimes we hit it and sometimes we don't. But that's part of it, that's part of our job is we're trying to serve all those things all at the same, and then all of this is ultimately trying to serve God. We can't forget that's the ultimate fallback on the thing. So
yeah.
Can I use that, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that illustration, and I'll bring that up at our next department meeting or something, and Dave will say, "Oh, that's brilliant. That's why you're like, well, I can't take that credit. I have to give credit to it."
Great artist copy, or good artist copy, great artist steal. Go for it.
No, what I like about that is that it directs our energy to look for the synergy, to look for that spot that's a real win for everybody. There's just that overlap. It's not just like, and that, it's interesting that gives language to what a lot of worship leaders miss. I got this great song. Cool. It's a great song. It's terrible for your band, and the words, your congregation doesn't speak like the song speaks. They don't use the same words, the same pictures, the same metaphors. It's too new, it's too archaic, whatever. Either one. It's just not. It's not a win. Okay, well let's take that great song and not do it. Let's take the energy and find songs where there's the overlap, where all 3 of those can be like, yes, we need to sing this. And if we just sang fewer songs and more of them that are like that could be really cool for the congregation and for us, and ultimately for the Lord. So.
Yeah, one thing we'll do, if there's a new song that we think sounds like it would be well received or successful in worship, for who we are, for our teams, we'll do what we call a cold open or a pre-service. So the congregation doesn't know the song. Maybe they've heard it once. And so it would actually sit right before the service officially starts. So we do that. And the room's mostly full. The people still obviously coming in and settling, and people still fellowshipping. But then the welcome and greeting, the announcements begin. That's the official start of the timing of the service. And that's one way a lot of people get exposed to a new song, and it kind of gauges it for us. Hey, I don't think it works. It just, and there's been a song or two where, yeah, it was fun for us, but it doesn't serve the purpose. So we didn't do it again. Other songs were like, people were singing. They already know it, from the radio, or so it just came into the rotation, and it was a great part of worship. And it's you never know. I mean, some songs that seem popular and meaningful can go a little flat. Every week, especially now in COVID, every week with all the restrictions, the congregation is very different.
Yeah.
You don't have the same groups of people in the same places all the time. It's like really very different. So now it's even more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anything else? I have a call in a few minutes, so I need to wrap us up, but
just one more thought played into all this, and it's just a personal thought. My biggest thing, more than the keys and the arrangement and all that stuff, is the biggest, one of the most hardest, one of the most difficult things that I've had to deal with is on Sunday morning, showing up and the band in my head is perfect and amazing and so awesome. The people that are there in the building are not this band. Not that they're wrong, they're just not. And when I don't expect this band to be that band, that's almost always when the best stuff happens, when we get closer to this.
Huh. Wait, when you don't expect them to be that? Oh yeah, right. When you don't have that expectation of them,
yeah,
it works.
And sometimes they show up and one or all of them will even go above and do something completely different. I'm like, that was even better than the band in my head, because it does happen. But when I don't expect them to be the same thing, but when I do expect them to be the same thing, it almost always falls apart.
Yeah.
We have our system is a template system. So there are 4 teams for the different services, and it's the same group of people. It's their slot that rotates every month. Some people serve more than once. So it helps, like the drummer and the bass player, they get that relationship rhythmically, they get the gel, piano player, etc. For the horns, it's critical. We get to stick together, and so not everyone can serve every time they're invited. So we do end up with a lot of substitutes in scheduling, and on paper, we know that looks phenomenal. That's going to be a phenomenal team. That's a great band. Take that band on tour. It's phenomenal. And then it doesn't work out because 3 people can't do it. So then you fill in, and on paper, you're like, it's going to be rough. And don't you know, just like you said, Andy, every time we let our pride go and just focus on what the Lord's giving us and make the best of it, somebody always steps up. There might be 1 or 2 of the regulars or the stronger musicians that are still on the platform, or whoever the worship leader or 2 might be. Somebody unexpectedly always steps up and just gels that, and it becomes something that in and of itself no one expected, and the Lord uses it. Seen that over and over. But when we hold that too tight and close and prideful, like, oh, this is going to suck, this is not, we should make a change, guess what? Then it does. I think you sense that tension,
Yeah.
And you know, it's like Rory Nolan always says, the pride issue is the issue. You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Good. Well, that's a good. We'll end on a Rory Nolan quote. So awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for hopping in and sharing your thoughts. And I unfortunately didn't record most of it, so
I noticed the record button popped up in the middle of it.
yeah,
That's okay.
yeah.